The Rant Network with Stuart Brisgell and David Solomon. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. You think about it, we rant about it. Listen to us live on Facebook.
Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. Well, I know not many people say that, but hey, welcome to another edition of the Rant Network. It's the Monday edition. And as you can see, I'm flying solo yet again. Stuart is off again today, and we'll see about him next week with respect to Independence Day weekend. But, hopefully you guys had a great weekend. I had myself a long weekend. I had a really enjoyable weekend. I wish the same for everybody going forward. But, once again, you just can't get away from reality. I don't care how good you are or where you've been or what rock you're hiding under or what cabin you're in. But as soon as you connect in, as soon as you turn on the news, man, the things hit you in the face like a ton of bricks. And what happened yet again last week was proof positive that no matter what, we as a society were a mess. So let's take a step back for just a second. Let's talk about a few things that has occurred in the last weeks. And if you were paying any attention, the racism line gets thrown all over the place. Okay. And it always reverts back to some sort of white racism, white supremacy, and what have you. And we go back to our histories about the founding of whether it's Canada, the United States. It goes back again and again. It just doesn't want to go away. It's like a bad smell. Okay. And I'm not trying to diminish it, but when the discovery was made last week in Saskatchewan of over 700 bodies of Indigenous people, I was ill. I was ill to no end. Knowing that there are thousands and thousands more like that out there makes me ill. Now, by contrast, if you go back, let's go back 1 year. Last week, Dennis Chauvin, we know the story about George Floyd. And last week, the sentence came down that Derek Chauvin was going to get 22 and a half years. And others are going to be punished for 11 years. We know that there's a tremendous amount of racism still prevalent in society. We know this. What really got me, though, was what I heard over the weekend from the Washington Post, of all places. And in case you want to know, former Amazon owner, he runs he runs the show at the Washington Post. And they've been putting out these video podcasts about society. And the new one that came out last week was, hey, white people, it's time for a period of shame. Deep, deep shame. Why? Because this video was basically bringing in a whole bunch of these experts. And they are saying, listen, guys, white people, all of you white people, it's time for you to realize there's a new normal. Okay. And what is white racial identity and why is it important? Okay. And it when understanding your whiteness and the ways that white supremacy benefits you. Holy mackerel. When I saw that over the weekend, I was hit like a ton of bricks. And I'm ill. I'm so ill because all of a sudden, or should I say again, whites were all lumped into one big basket. Now I'm going to tell you a page out of my history. Okay. I'm a first generation Canadian. My parents immigrated here in 1964. I'm a first generation here. My sister's a first generation here. My kids are second generation here. My family doesn't date back generations to the founding of this country. My family are immigrants. We also happen to be white. And if you think that I am not dealing with racism of any kind, we've talked about this in previous rants, you don't even know. To sort of throw every white person into this bucket, I don't get it. Because if we go back to the history and understand the real history of what's going on here, the people who destroyed the indigenous lands, the people who we're talking about the whites, the slavery that we keep coming back again and again. I am telling you, folks, to take every white person and say you're all responsible for that is a load of garbage. The Catholic Church has a tremendous, tremendous responsibility with what happened with Indigenous peoples and the schools. That's not every white person, I'm sorry to say. And if you look in the United States of what's going on, the founding fathers and what have you, yeah, they were white men for sure. What religion were they? Where did they come from? Not my families, not my generation, not my descendants or antecedents, actually. They're not even close. The colonialists were French and British without a doubt. And if you think that Italians, Irish, Jews, Eastern Europeans, or what have you, give me a break. The notion, again, of lumping us all into one big freaking basket is vile. But let's take this a step further. What else could they have possibly have told us white people? Well, here's the comment that I really think, that this counselor, Elise Kennedy, added that whites needed a period of deep shame for being white and for acknowledging the harm that our ancestors have caused. The podcast also insisted that no matter how much effort is being put into anti-racist, there is no end to white accountability. No matter how much you work on it, there's still almost even more work to be done. Voila. Again, it doesn't matter. All us white people are thrown into the basket and we're all responsible. I don't know. I don't know how you could make such a blanket statement. It is, and of course, these are white people. They're not African Americans who are making. These are white people saying, we should be ashamed. We should be ashamed. Last year, Greg Popovich, the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, when he heard about George Floyd, said, I'm ashamed to be white. Are you ashamed to be white? Really, Greg? Was that what it was? White? Only white people? Could we go a little bit deeper? Go a little bit? Because white isn't a race, right? You can't tell me all those white people are a big one happy race. We're a skin color. We're not a race. I mean, come on. I heard it. Critical race theory will tell you otherwise, that all us white people, we're all the same. What the hell ever happened to individuality? Values. I mean, my religion is not, I'm different. So how could you throw us under the bus like that? These are white people who are now trying to pick up the pieces and trying to be, good and say, oh, look, we're ashamed. We should be ashamed by our ancestors. We should be ashamed. What do you mean be ashamed? Ashamed and what? And do what? I'll get to that in a minute. How about this one? This is good. Okay. This is trauma specialist and author Resma Mekham, who said white people need to start getting together specifically around race. Wait a minute. White people should get together around race. Now, if I were to say that all blacks were the same, all Asians are the same, I can't even use Asian. I can't even use Oriental because it's not all the same. Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, they're not the same. So don't call them all the same. Muslims, they're not all the same. Or the Egyptians and Syrians and Lebanese. Like what you lump, it's okay to lump every white person into a basket. Forget about a roller brush. You've used, I don't know what size roller brush to put us all together. When in reality, give me a goddamn break. I don't think I'm in a bucket. Now, there are people who will tell you with critical race theory that, yes, I am white and I am privileged. I'm not stopped by the police because I am white. So if I drive a nice car and I go through a nice neighborhood, likelihood the police won't stop me. That's like, listen to what you're saying here. Okay? I should be ashamed because of that? Or how about re-educating people properly? Not, I should be ashamed to be white. I didn't choose my skin color, and I didn't choose my lot in life. There are white people who are living in absolute abhorrent poverty, and there are African Americans and African Canadians who are living in absolute lap of luxury. There are people with spectacular educations and all that, but yet let's lump us all in together in one big happy bucket and say, we're all white. We're all white. Last year, Dr. Naomi Torres Mackel wrote a whole piece in Psychology Today, why white shame is a term everyone should learn. Everyone? So I need to be ashamed? Oh, come on. I'm not ashamed to be white. I'm ashamed about actions. I'm ashamed by how people act. Racism isn't one direction. Racism isn't white versus black. Racism is about differences. And folks, I've had this thrown at my face that as being a Jew, the racism that has been hurled at me in the last 2 months after what happened in Israel between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, not Palestinians, I will stress it again, between Hamas and Israel, I was vilified. Racism was hurled at me. Was that white supremacy? Really? Try again. When the whole business, of the COVID hit and the Chinese community was blamed, was that white supremacy? Are you telling me that was limited to white supremacy? I've talked about this ad nauseum. Folks, enough already. We've labeled this stuff to make somebody else not only feel bad, but you're responsible. Now, I'm not responsible for what my grandparents did and what their parents did. Listen, my grandparents were lucky not to be killed in the Holocaust, okay? They moved, they got around, they were lucky. But they lived an unbelievable amount of difficulty going from country to country till they finally settled here, and we finally have got a life for ourselves. So you're faulting me for what happened in the 17th and 18th and 19th century and even in the early 20th century. For God's sakes, my family wasn't even here during the civil rights movement. But yet, let me tell you something. Had my family been on the boat that tried to get into Canada and the United States back in the 1930s, they would have been denied entry into every European and American country. So, hey, wait a minute. So wait, is that white supremacy? Come on. Your guys are completely screwed up. The Washington Post should be ashamed of itself. And anybody else who supports this should be beyond ashamed of itself. By labeling every white person as guilty? Nah, come on. It's complete revisionist history. Because the people who came here from Eastern Europe, from Russia, from Ukraine, you know what kind of racism was hurled at them? The Irish, who came over, lived in Boston. Ask any Irish family, even here in Quebec, what they did to the Irish. All white people, folks. So are they part of the problem? I will not tolerate anybody who will tell me to be ashamed to be white. I'm ashamed to be a human being if you throw that at me. I'm not ashamed to be white. I am ashamed by how I'm made to be feel. I'm a man of action. I'm not a man of words. So stop telling me that I'm responsible for what has happened. I want to go forward and say, how do we move forward? Slavery? Yes, there were slave owners in the United States. They happened to be white people. So are you going to erase George Washington and all the rest of them from your history books? Because that's where you're going. I mean, we're trying to do this in Canada with Johnny MacDonald. We're trying to see how we're trying to erase our history. We can't erase the history, folks. It's not about erasing it. It's about understanding it. You're dealing with a generation that racism was acceptable, that there were superior beings, quote unquote. I'm not saying I agree with it, but they felt like superior beings. And it even went into World War II as the Nazis convinced its entire country of that they were the superior race. So wait a minute. They're doing that. We're doing that. Do we know what slippery slope we're going down? When you start using race as right now is what you're doing with all of this shaming, you're no different than what the Nazis have tried to teach and indoctrinate their people. We're going to go down in history. The countries are going to burn. We're not learning. We're going to burn. We're going to get into a civil war because you want to shame today's white person. Not adjust and change. Because right now, all you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to make you feel bad. But what are you going to do next week? What's the action next week? Did it help poverty? Did it help unemployment? Did it help health? Did it help any of this stuff? Because if you think that that's what it's done, it's the opposite. You've done the opposite. Shaming doesn't help. And for the Washington Post, you should be completely eliminated by you promoting this type of hate and finding these types of experts to tell me how I should feel, how ashamed I should feel. To hell with you, the Washington Post, and to hell with all of you who believe in all these theories that white people should be ashamed, should be guilty, and God knows what's the next thing. Show me real, tangible action, and I will support you, but not this way. Ladies and gentlemen, appreciate your comments that you've been flying out there here on the chat. Looking forward to seeing you guys all on Wednesday. Wednesday, we'll be back here on the Rant Network, where Stuart should be back. Looking forward to seeing you again every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. We love you guys. We love what you're doing. We love what you're sharing. Continue to follow us everywhere that you can. We're all over Facebook. We're all over where the podcast where you can find. And hey, remember, don't be ashamed. Wishing you all a wonderful, great day, guys. Looking forward to seeing you guys